Hello, good morning to the audience in Brazil. Good afternoon, viewers in Indian time zone. India-Brazil webinar, Sustainable Mobility Ethanol Talks 2 is starting now.
Today and tomorrow, policymakers and experts from both countries will be engaged in discussions about India's burgeoning ethanol economy.
Ethanol Talks 2 is organized by the Government of Brazil, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, SIAM, the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA, and Brazil's Ethanol Cluster, APLA.
This inaugural session will be moderated by Mr. Prashant K. Banerjee, Executive Director of SIAM. Mr. Banerjee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolina, and thank you, Roberta. Very good morning to my Brazilian friends, delegates, and guests, and good afternoon to Indian delegates. Welcome to Ethanol Talk. SIAM is extremely privileged, proud, and happy to be associated with this very important program jointly organized by UNICA, APLA, Bioenergy Solutions under the aegis of Embassy of Brazil, New Delhi, India, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of Brazil. As you are aware that India and Brazil signed a memorandum of understanding in February 2020, looking at the importance of bioenergy in economic efficiency, social benefits related to the GHG reduction, energy security, self-sufficiency, farmers' income growth. The mission of the collaboration was to promote sound policy dialogue, creating a sustainable low-carbon decarbonization of the transportation sector, and of course the investment promotion, technology cooperation, policies and practices in the areas of regulations, standardization, technology, and R&D. Today's event is being organized under this ambit of cooperation, and SIAM is happy to have contributed to this bilateral exchange. As you are aware that during the execution of this MOU, overarching MOU, to coordinate and align the goals of the MOU, joint working group led by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas started activities in the area of biofuel and in particular required in the ethanol economy for fuels related to the transportation. Considering the importance of the subject and SIAM being an apex body of the auto industry, we invited UNICA to participate in Auto Expo in 2020. And I am so pleased that under the leadership of UNICA, Evandro Gussi, UNICA participated in Auto Expo, and Mr. Gadkari, the Honorable Minister of Road Transport, actually inaugurated the UNICA stall, which was a very aptly titled as a campaign, Bring Back My Blue Sky. As you are aware that our energy requirement is growing very fast. And as per MOPNG projection, a CAGR of 8 to 9% in petrol sale is to happen by 2025. And this will lead to consumption of around 50 million metric ton of sales of petrol. This implies that 10 million metric ton of ethanol is required as MOPNG is envisaging E20 rollout by 2025 across India from present level of 10% by 2022. I'm sure that this roadmap given by the ministry will be executed in right earnest, and auto industry will bring E20 compliant vehicles well in time. Brazil started the ethanol program over 100 years ago and is the leader in the ethanol consumption in transportation sector. I'm sure that the learning today from this webinar will further motivate the oil and automobile industry along with other stakeholders abreast this fuel and will pave the way for further collaboration. The architect of this great initiative is none other than His Excellency Andre Lago, Ambassador of Brazil, New Delhi, India. His presence is further helping us to take this talk forward. Without further ado, may I request Mr. Andre Lago to come in and give his piece of wisdom as he has motivated all of us. Welcome, Mr. Lago.
Thank you so much, Prashant. That's so kind of you. I am very, very excited to see this Ethanol Talk 2 happening now. And I am very, very happy that we are doing this with SIAM with so much enthusiasm. And I believe that we're going to hear, after I speak, we're going to hear two extraordinary ministers that are so committed to that. One is Hardip Puri, that maybe some people don't know, but Minister Puri was ambassador to Brazil for a few years, and he is an enthusiast of this agenda. And it is extraordinary now that he is he is the minister that is in charge of ethanol in the Indian government. So I think that all the stars are joining us to make sure that this is going to go ahead in the best possible way. We are also going to hear the Minister of Mines and Energy of Brazil, Mr. Bento Albuquerque, who has been here and exchanged wonderful ideas with his counterparts in India during the presidential visit in last year's Republic Day, and is another great associate in this operation. And obviously Evandro Gussi, that is now my new friend of UNICA, because I have a long list of friends that have gone through UNICA, but I'm so glad, Evandro, that we are working together between these two countries that are designed to get together in this sense. And Rajesh Menon, we are also very glad that your enthusiasm is very clear, and we're also going to have you as one of the speakers of our inaugural session. I want to say that the key word today is the follow-up that we are giving to this subject, because sometimes people see governments or entities advancing in something and then it stops. Since we decided really to go ahead with this cooperation, we have been seeing not only the meetings of the agreements that you have mentioned and that were signed between India and Brazil. We had the working groups getting together of the three agreements that we have that touch biofuel. And we are having this second ethanol talk with even more participation of extraordinary experts, some of them very good friends of mine, and I'm really happy to see this interaction. The great news about this is that these discussions have really been a discovery for many of the participants on how much India and Brazil really have all reasons to get together into that. So I'm very glad to see this follow-up happening. And I want to stress just two or three issues. When I started working with these issues many years ago, Roberto Rodrigues, one of my gurus, told me that ethanol was probably the revenge of the tropical world, because only the tropical countries can afford to have the most extraordinary of all biofuels. And it's true. And this is, for me as ambassador to India, a special pleasure, because when we see India growing, which I believe is a source of great happiness for our country, And even if India has surpassed us very quickly, by the way, in the production of automobiles, in the production of sugar, what we see is that we have this moment in which the two largest producers of sugarcane in the world can work together for something that they really need, because they have still to bring many of the progresses for their population, and mobility is obviously a central issue. So the two largest producers of sugarcane becoming the two most important and committed governments and businesses with ethanol will also allow ethanol to become a commodity, which is something that Brazil has always thought that would favor the developing country. We have lots of other countries, friendly countries of India and Brazil, that can also produce ethanol, and that could be extremely favored by this movement that I believe that India and Brazil together can somehow be already a very strong beginning. We, we will discuss in very specific and in very technical terms the success of the Brazilian ethanol. But I have to tell you that I was so glad to see in a recent meeting how the most sustainable car today is the hybrid flex fuel. It's it emits less than any other car. And when I see the Indian government so committed, not only in raising to 20% the mix, but also for a very strong mandate regarding flex fuel cars, I can only see a brilliant future in that bilateral cooperation of ours. So it is an enormous pleasure to be with all of you. I have to thank you all. This was an effort of coordination, and I thank very much all the participants and all those that were able to get together, so many interesting people, and thank my team very much for that. But I want to tell you that I'm very honored to be in India at this moment in which Brazil and India inaugurate a new step of absolutely central theme that, as we have seen at COP26, I mean, our countries have to work in that direction, and so many countries are counting on Brazil and India to make this an even bigger success. So welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for the enormous support. The Brazilian embassy, my team, maybe we have worked a lot, but it is thanks to all of you that we can be together today. So thank you very much, and I give you back, Prashant, the floor.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your excellent address and setting the context of today's meeting. Your words are always motivating, and your presence is grace for our event.
His Excellency, Mr. Bento Albuquerque, Minister of Mines and Energy of the Government of Brazil, His Excellency, Mr. Andre Aranha Correa do Lago, Brazilian Ambassador to India, leaders of industry, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to speak at the inaugural session of the India-Brazil virtual seminar on sustainable mobility, Ethanol Talks 2. I would like to congratulate the Brazilian government, the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA, and the Indian Automotive Industry, SIAM, for organizing this seminar to discuss such an important issue which is of such high priority worldwide. As you may be aware, I have a special connection with Brazil. In my previous profession as a member of the Indian Diplomatic Corps, I served as India's ambassador to Brazil from 2006 to 2008. It therefore gives me even greater pleasure to be with you today and to interact with you. The global energy landscape is under transition. Demand centers are shifting from developed countries to faster growing emerging markets like India and Brazil. Meeting this growth involves ensuring energy security while safeguarding of the environment for future generations. It is growth with decarbonization, growth through technological improvements and energy efficiency, growth by augmenting the alternate energy portfolio. At the recently concluded COP26 summit in Glasgow, the Honorable Prime Minister of India set out 5 targets for India, namely increasing India's non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030, meeting 50% of our energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030, reducing total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now till 2030, reducing the carbon intensity of our economy by less than 45% by 2030, and to achieve the target of net zero by the year 2070. We are using a multi-pronged transformative approach to achieve these goals. In the past, we faced many challenges in ethanol blending program due to limited feedstock options, procurement challenges, poor distillery capacity. On the contrary, in recent years, my government has worked on a mission mode to resolve these bottlenecks. Let me share some of these with you. We had developed an ethanol blending roadmap, which was released this year by our Prime Minister at the World Environment Day, where we have advanced targets of 20% ethanol blending in gasoline by 2025 from 2030. In the last 7 years, we have increased ethanol allocation by more than 770% to 3,320 million litres, and during the same period, increased ethanol blending from 1.53% to 8.5%. The upcoming year, 2021-22, will see use of 10% ethanol blending on a pan-India basis. Under the PM Jeevan Yojana, viability gap funding has been introduced for setting up of commercial and demo units of advanced biofuel. Indian energy companies have been assigned to set up 12 new biorefineries by 2024 that would produce ethanol from second-generation pathways using agricultural waste. These companies are also exploring third-generation ethanol production route, wherein refinery off gases will be used to produce ethanol. Further, we are getting ready to launch E20 fuel by 2023, and by the same time, E20 compliant vehicles will be rolled out. Beyond 2025, India would plan for 100% ethanol dispensing on a commercial scale in the automobile sector. The CO2 emission offset through E20 will help to decrease the overall annual CO2 emissions of India by 0.9% and can save the country US $4 billion per annum of its import bills. Friends, the possibility for cooperation between India and Brazil is bright. In 2020, during the state visit of President of Brazil to India, our two countries entered into an MOU on bioenergy cooperation, which provides a framework for cooperation and promotion of bilateral investment in biofuels, bioelectricity, and biogas supply chains. The success of the Brazilian ethanol program is visible for all to see. Brazil has set a benchmark for other countries in making the mobility sector sustainable with the help of agricultural sector. To conclude, I would like to say that the future demand of ethanol in India is robust and increasing and brings with it opportunities across the entire spectrum of activities. I am also confident that the exchanges during the virtual seminar will provide a good platform to share experiences, best practices, and lay the groundwork for a strong Indo-Brazil partnership in the area of biofuels and clean transportation. I urge both the private sector in India and Brazil to make use of this golden opportunity for investing in the Indian ethanol industry. Once again, I wish the participants of today's seminar all the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your words of wisdom. May I now request Honorable Minister of Mines and Energy, Government of Brazil, to deliver his special address as the guest of honor. Over to you, His Excellency, Mr. Bento Albuquerque.
Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas of India, Hardeep Singh Puri. Dear friends, I am pleased to join this inaugural section of the second edition of Ethanol Talks between Brazil and India. It's a great satisfaction to see the engagement of so many Indian and Brazilian agencies and organizations in this exercise. This is the result of our joint efforts over the last few years. In the broader context of our energy cooperation, the bilateral agenda on bioenergy has clearly gained importance. It is worth mentioning the bilateral meeting on biofuels held in India in 2018, and the signing in 2020 of our Memorandum of Understanding on Bioenergy Cooperation. In February 2020, we organized, together with other partners from the private sector, the first edition of the Ethanol Talks. I am glad to see that we are deepening the initiative. Scaling up the use of modern and sustainable bioenergy will be essential for creating a low-carbon future and to attain the goals of the Paris Agreement. According to the International Energy Agency, worldwide use of modern bioenergy has to double until 2030, and even triple in the transport sector, if the objective of limiting global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius is to be achieved. Besides, bioenergy contributes to energy security, economic growth, the creation of jobs, and the generation of wealth in the countryside. Brazil has always recognized the benefits of bioenergy in general, and ethanol in particular. We have been implementing policies aiming to boost the production and use of ethanol and other bioenergy solutions in our country for decades. Brazil owes a lot of its clean matrix to ethanol and other energy products derived from sugarcane. Indeed, sugarcane biomass is the renewable source with the largest share in our energy matrix and was responsible for 19% of our energy supply in 2020. I am very glad to note that ethanol, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi has put it, is also a priority for 21st century India, a country with vast potential for biofuels. Some recent decisions by the Indian government point in that direction, especially the adoption of E20 mandate in 2025. The major investments in the production of first and second generation ethanol and the intention of manufacturing flex-fuel vehicles in the country. Implementing so many transformations in such a relatively short time is certainly challenging, and international cooperation will be essential. The present second edition of Ethanol Talks can give a concrete contribution to address several of the aspects involved in the implementation of a sound ethanol and biofuels policy. Our bilateral cooperation in bioenergy is at its highest point ever, but we are determined to go further. In this sense, I take this opportunity to invite Minister Puri, Minister Gadkari, and other Indian colleagues and friends to come to Brazil in 2022 for a high-level mission focused on ethanol. Together and based on a public-private collaboration, we will take decisive steps in a partnership that will certainly go on for many years. I wish you all a productive conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your very inspirational speech and setting new targets for bilateral relations on the energy scenario, particularly in transportation sector, as is the talk today. Thank you once again to both the ministers, and may I now have the privilege to invite none other than the most important, dynamic, and visionary leader of UNICA, Mr. Evandro Gussi, President, Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association. He has been to India just prior to COVID in 2020 beginning, and his vision has actually resulted into much progress made in this front. So let's welcome him. Mr. Gussi, over to you.
Thank you, my dear friend, Prashant Banerjee. It's an honor for me to be here, even virtually. I hope to come back to India, one of my second houses in the world. I'd like to thank again my dear friend, André Correa do Lago, the ambassador of Brazil in New Delhi, and his team. It was a wonderful place of the best of the diplomacy, the Brazilian diplomatic tradition is there in New Delhi. It was amazing to hear the speeches of the ministers, and better than listen is to know the implementation of the speeches. First of all, I think that we have two key points in this moment. The first would be to celebrate a successful cooperation between the private sector and the government, between two giants as India and Brazil. Second, to know that we have deep challenges to be achieved for the new years, in the new years, especially after Saturday, when the world decided to advance in reduction of CO2 emissions, and we know how ethanol is able to help in this path. I'd like to remember the starting of this process, especially to serve as an example for other countries, for other initiatives, because I'm sure that India and Brazil, more than build a huge program for bioenergy, for low carbon mobility together, more than this, and this is very, very big, it's enough big, but more than this, India and Brazil will have a mission to share this experience with another countries, because we are saying that we are part of the solution. When we talk about ethanol, we talk with proud, but in the same time we talk with humility, because we are part of the solution. We aren't the solution itself, because no one is the solution itself. The deepness of the challenge that we have in sustainable mobility will conduct us into to try to have the most a lot of I could say a lot of solutions to achieve these challenges. And what we are saying is that ethanol is an important solution for an important part of the world, because we have a drop-in solution. You don't have to change the infrastructure of the countries. You have a huge reduction of CO2 footprint, and with a social and economic development, prove it in Brazil and prove it in India. Millions of people in India have your life, your families issued by ethanol value chain. In Brazil, millions of people, thousands of cities have your real life impacted in a good sense by ethanol value chain. Then we have here the true meaning of modern ESG. We have environmental aspects, we have social aspects, and here we have a wonderful example of good governance between governments and private sector and between two countries. I think that our experience must be shared, and I'm doing this. We were in Dubai for Expo 2020 in 2021, showing our experience, showing how India is increasing its participation in sustainable mobility. We were now the 2 weeks ago in Glasgow, showing our experience with India, showing how we are having a deep collaborative and partnership path. I think that Ambassador André Corrêa do Lago will agree with me, because the diplomacy in the last word, in the bottom line, is to aggregate, is to join together, and we are doing this. In my first classes in political science, I heard that the war is the fail of the politics, the fail of diplomacy, and here we are in another side of the history. We are in the deep meaning of agreement, in the deep meaning of partnership, and again, we have to celebrate, and we have to know that we have a lot of work for the next years, because world will need us, will need our work and our experience in this subject, in this work. To end, to finish, I'd like to say I'm very happy because we are working to be in India in January. It's internal information yet, because we are starting the process, but I hope that in the last week of January I would be in one of my second houses in the world, in India, where I have more than partners, I have friends. And this is when someone called me a member of parliament, when I was, or now as president of UNICA, I say I prefer the title of friend, because other titles we have today and we won't have tomorrow, but the title of friend we can have always. We can have for all the life, and who find in Bible, in the Christian Bible, we, in Jew Bible also, we find a quote, wonderful quote, who find a friend who found a friend found a teacher. Then I am a rich man, because I have a lot of friends, and India is one of the best places for that. And I'm very glad to be there again in January. And again, thank you for the honor, Mr. Ambassador, to may join with you and your team. Wonderful example. Rio Branco, the starter of Brazilian diplomacy, be proud in the heaven, seeing your work from your team. Prashant, thank you again. You believe it, you join it, you decided to work and to collaborate, and this is amazing. I have a sense of realism, but always a sense of hopeness in this process. Thank you, and again, celebrate and work. The two words, in my opinion, of sustainable mobility ethanol talks. And again, thanking the Indian government, the words of Prime Minister Modi in the International Environment Day, it was amazing. We became full of hope with his word, and to thank also President Bolsonaro in the last year, being in India, signing the MOU, especially with Minister Bento and Minister Teresa. We have a great team in both government, and we have a great team in both private sectors. And I'd love to thank for the last but not the least, my dear friend Flavio Castellari, the Executive Director of APLA, the Brazilian sugarcane cluster here, Brazilian ethanol cluster, with amazing promotional work. Thank you again, my dear friends. Have a good afternoon there in New Delhi, in India, and for everyone here in Brazil, a good morning.
Thank you very much, Evandro, my friend, as well as the very fact is, whenever there is a football match, 1.3 billion Indians pray for, the friend Brazil to win the cup. So that's the kind of friendship we have the legacy of, and we are looking forward to cementing the new friendship, new relationship in the ethanol economy, embracing in transport sector and enhancing the self-reliance for India. As I say that Indian automobile industry is all set to embrace ethanol economy, but in the driving seat of the Indian Automobile Industry Association, Mr. Rajesh Menon is committed, and his presence here will make you understand that how Indian automobile industry is gearing up to embrace ethanol, higher blends usage in our vehicles. So without further ado, may I invite Director General of Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, Mr. Rajesh Menon, to give his address as well as vote of thanks. Over to you, Rajesh, please.
Thank you very much, Prashant. It's indeed a great honor for me to represent SIAM and propose the vote of thanks to all partners who help us to conceptualize and execute this important webinar. First of all, I would like to propose a very warm vote of thanks to our chief guest, Honorable Union Minister Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, for his enlightening speech. Your address today will be echoed in our minds for a long time to come. Government of India's commitment on sustainable pathways and adoption of a greener roadmap for the Indian automobile industry would continue to be supported by the Indian automobile industry and SIAM. In addition to ethanol adoption, we are also working very closely with the Petroleum Ministry on adoption of other sustainable fuels like CNG, LNG, and hydrogen. A very special thanks to our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Bento Albuquerque, Minister of Mines and Energy, Government of Brazil, for his special address at this webinar. In the last few years, SIAM has been partnering with Brazil on this very important partnership opportunity for ethanol. And we look forward to continuing this and further strengthening this engagement with Brazil. This is a partnership we cherish, and we will keep it, we'll try and endeavor to make it as interesting and as exciting as partnership on football. A special, of course, a very, very special thanks to His Excellency the Ambassador of Brazil to India. Thank you for your initial welcome remarks to set the context for this very important webinar. As was mentioned in the beginning, he is the main driver for this initiative. He has been very personally involved in this webinar and would like to, from on behalf of SIAM, we would like to express our most sincere gratitude to the Excellency for this. And it's a partnership, as I mentioned, we cherish, and we would look forward to working under your guidance and your collaboration to take this partnership forward. As you also mentioned at the beginning, you said this is Ethanol Talks 2, which is a clear indicator that this is a follow-up to what we started, and we will work with the Brazilian embassy to ensure that we continue this follow-up and try and make it much more structured and much more deepened. Lastly, a very warm thanks to Mr. Evandro Gussi, President of Unica Brazil. We as SIAM, we look forward to working very closely with Unica on adoption of ethanol as a transport fuel. We look forward to your visit next year, and we will be very happy to facilitate an interaction with our industry when you are during your visit to India. Do let us know. We will work with your office, and it's a partnership we'd like to strengthen and deepen, as I mentioned earlier. Last but not the least, a most sincere thank you to all the participants. I'm sure all the participants would find this very useful, especially the upcoming technical sessions with some very eminent speakers and panelists representing all the stakeholders in the value chain of ethanol from both Brazil and India. So thank you once again for your very gracious presence. And with this, I would like to conclude my vote of thanks with a most sincere thank you to all the organizers, especially the Brazilian embassy, for giving us this opportunity to participate and to collaborate with Brazil. Thank you very much.
After a short break, we will turn to panel 1 titled Ethanol, Public Policies and Sustainability. Please keep tuned.
In Brazil, ethanol production is highly sustainable. We follow strict rules ranging from a zero deforestation policy to the reduction of pollutant gas emissions. We invest in technological innovation without forgetting people. We generate energy for thousands of Brazilian homes. Biogas and organic fertilizers from the byproducts of biofuel and sugar. All of this takes place in only 1.2% of the Brazilian territory. The expansion of sugarcane plantations, when necessary, takes place in degraded pastures. And more importantly, our sugarcane plantations are more than 2,000 kilometers from the Amazon. We are all part of building a new era of sustainability. Products from renewable sources with environmental and social protection. Products that respect life. This is what we offer to the world.
Good morning to everyone in Brazil and good evening to those in Indian time zone. We are starting now the first panel discussion of Ethanol Talks, focused on public policies and sustainability of ethanol fuel. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Eduardo Leão, Executive Director of Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA. The panelists are Plínio Nastari, President and CEO of Datagro in Brazil, Mr. Sunil Kumar, Joint Secretary for Refineries, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India, Mrs. Daniele Machado and Silva Conde, Deputy Superintendent of Biofuels and Product Quality of the National Agency of Petroleum, Natural Gas and Biofuels, Government of Brazil, and Mr. Subodh Kumar Singh, Joint Secretary for Food and Public Distribution, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Government of India. Now I invite the chair to take the lead. Mr. Leão, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberta. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome this very knowledgeable and high-level team of panelists who will participate in this panel one that will discuss, as Roberta has just mentioned, ethanol public policies and sustainability. In fact, talking about biofuels and particularly ethanol, public policies and long-term rules are the name of the game. So the idea today is to understand from where we came since the first ethanol talks that took place in Delhi at the beginning of last year and where we are right now. What are the challenges, the opportunities, themes that will be discussed over this panel. Indeed, the roadmap announced by the Indian Prime Minister in the World Environment Day last 5th of June was a defining moment for the sustainability of ethanol program in India. The roadmap that was announced was set very ambitious targets for Indian ethanol program, 20% ethanol blend into the petrol and flex fuel vehicles by 2025 running in all streets in India, and which will bring important benefits to the country from an environmental and from public health perspectives in reducing GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and improving the air quality in the large cities in India, but also bringing important economic benefits, since the program should bring market alternatives to the sugar producers in the country, in addition to reducing the Indian dependence on imported oil, as it happened in Brazil 40 years ago. Based on this, we'd like to listen from the panelists today their assessments about the effectiveness of current public policies for the implementation of these targets, these goals. What would be the challenges and suggestions to help to overcome them? Moreover, would there be lessons learned from Brazil based on our nearly 5 decades experience in the use of ethanol large scale as a fuel that could contribute to this effort? Without further ado, I would like to invite first Dr. Plinio Nastari, President and CEO of Datagro, one of the most recognized and knowledgeable experts in the world in this area, to bring his considerations. Dr. Nastari, I would like to invite you for a 6-7 minute initial considerations, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leão. I'm very glad to participate in this very important opening panel. Thank you for setting the tone of the discussion. And since the issue here at stake is public policies for biofuels development, first comment I would like to make is about the need that policies in different areas be coordinated. Policies in the industrial side, policies for the development of automotive technology, policies for establishing targets for reduction of global emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, targets that set limits for local emissions in transport, policies in agriculture, and finally, energy policy. All these must be coordinated for biofuels, a biofuels initiative to be successful and be implemented in a right way. From the almost 5 decades experience in Brazil, we have learned that this is a project that should be viewed as an integrated social, economic, environmental development project. It's not only about energy and environment and health. It's about social and economic development. So all this must be integrated. And for a successful biofuel program to work out, it's very necessary, it's fundamental that clear fuel specifications be established to guide not only producers, but also the automobile industry in designing the appropriate engineering for innovation and the development of auto parts and all the automobile technology. It's very important that we have emission limits that take into account the differences that exist between ethanol and gasoline. And these differences are sometimes really relevant. The combustion of ethanol produces non-reactive hydrocarbons, different than the reactive hydrocarbons emitted by gasoline. The burning of ethanol produces acetaldehydes, which are a cousin of vinegar. Gasoline produces formaldehydes, which is a cousin of formol, which is used to preserve dead bodies. And the toxicity, relative toxicity between acetaldehydes and formaldehydes is completely different. Acetaldehydes is over 40 times less toxic than formaldehydes. So it's very important that emissions take into account these qualitative differences. Also, it's important that policies establish incentives for innovation in the automobile industry, and regulation defines how the fuel distribution system is going to work. In particular, it is recommended the installation of filters in pump hoses to capture gum accumulated over time by gasoline deposits and gasoline degradation in fuel tanks, which are currently in place and need to be captured, all this gum, so that it does not enter the automobile and the two-wheeler combustion systems. So in a nutshell, taking these issues into consideration and having a long-term approach in coordinating all policies, we are sure that India is going to be very successful in its initiative to increase the use of ethanol. And we really wish that India is very successful in this program to the benefit of not only the lower dependence on oil imports, but also improvement in air quality and support to the farm sector. So with these initial thoughts, thank you very much, Mr. Leon, and I look forward to the discussion to follow.
Thank you, Dr. Anastari. Very interesting aspects regarding the multidimensional aspect of such a program, and also the need of clear understanding of the benefits that ethanol can bring, and what are the rules, specific rules that would bring the best possible benefit from it. Following the discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Sunil Kumar, Joint Secretary from the Indian Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas from refineries, who could also, if possible, Mr. Kumar, elaborate a little bit more on the inspiring message that was given by your minister in the initial remarks of this event. And we look forward to listen to the ministry's views in terms of current policies, challenges, and suggestions to overcome them. Thanks a lot. The floor is yours, Mr. Kumar.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm thankful for this opportunity to join this discussion. And we have been interacting as a ministry with Dr. Nastari for quite some time, and we have learned from the Brazilian experience. We have also formed a joint working group on biofuel with Brazil. We had recently had a meeting in which Brazilian ambassador to India also joined in that discussion. Coming to biofuel, all may be aware that in 2018, we amended our biofuel policy, and that was the major mother of all policy intervention, which also helped bioethanol. We defined biofuels, we expanded the feedstock, and we also took feedstock beyond the non-food sources, beyond sugarcane, up to damaged food grain, rice, maize, as well as advanced biofuel from cellulosic and lignocellulosic material. The whole policy was based on 4 pillars: that import substitution was one, local employment generation was another, and farmer incomes, apart from being environmental friendly, as Dr. Nastari has mentioned, that the emission reduction and other benefits of ethanol-blended petrol is much more than a normal E0 petrol. Moving forward, when we started procuring ethanol, there were many challenges. The capacity side challenges, my colleague, Joint Secretary Sugar, will elaborate later on during the meeting discussion of this. And I will talk more about how we try to motivate and encourage the industry to increase their supply capability. The first was the movement of ethanol. Ethanol being a subject of the federal units, So ethanol movement from one unit to another was an issue. There were a lot of taxation issue, movement issue. So we amended the act that ethanol meant for blending in petrol will not be subject to state laws. That helped the free movement of ethanol across the country, because our country has that, as in Brazil, some areas have excess ethanol and some have deficient ethanol based from sugarcane. So if you are aware of Indian map, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra and Karnataka, that these are main surplus state which produce ethanol from sugarcane. And from these states, the ethanol was moving to other states. So that movement thing was addressed by this policy change. Next, our oil marketing companies had an issue of storage of this ethanol, how to store and blend at the depot. That was also taken care of with many policy intervention. Third was that pricing. We started with the market price. We started with the tendering, and then we realized that market intervention is needed. So we went for administrative price. So we started fixing price of ethanol based on the feedstock. So right now, I must elaborate that currently we are producing ethanol from three sources of sugarcane, A, B, and C. Sugarcane juice is A molasses, and B heavy, and C heavy. So three different rates are given for ethanol, and two more feedstock are also added recently. One is maize and another is fruit grain. So we have expanded that and given different rates to encourage more capacity in the country. My colleague will elaborate more on that. Second was fuel standards, emission standards of E10. That also we work, our Bureau of Indian Standards fixed standards for these blends, and emission from this blended fuel was also done. What we did that we had also planned for higher blend. So we had the specification for higher blend. Based on this policy intervention, our actual progress was much more than what we were anticipating. And based on that encouraging signs, Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister on 5th of June, Environment Day, advanced the target. Our target of 20% blending was 2030. Dr. Nastari is aware because he is associated with us for quite some time. And he advanced to 2025. So we are looking forward to achieve that target. Recently, we had an expression of interest for supply of ethanol in coming 3 years, and we got overwhelming response in that. We had an offer for 6 billion liters, but we got offer for 12 billion liters in coming years. So supply side is we are comfortable, but coming to demand side, with we had a discussion with Dr. Nastari about flexi fuel and other, how to use that, how to have a vehicles will use the higher blends. So that is a challenge right now, how to populate our country with the new flexi fuel vehicle, or change in the existing vehicle pool, which is also needed, because these vehicles are material compatible, but they are not compatible at per engine. So we need compatibility, material, engine, both, as well as new vehicles to consume more ethanol, more than 20%. These are my initial thoughts, and I will join later on discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Very insightful thoughts brought by you. You brought interesting aspects related to the regulation of this program, such as the challenge of price fixing for ethanol, challenge for standards, the aspects related to supply and demand that will have to be addressed over the next years. And I'm sure that some of them will be very well addressed in the following panels that will basically discuss aspects related to automobile technologies, and also related to production and innovation in the sector. Without further ado, let me invite the third panelist of this panel, Mrs. Danielle Machado Silva Conde, who is the Deputy Superintendent of Biofuels and Product Quality from the National Agency of Petroleum, Natural Gas and Biofuels in Brazil, which has a very important role here to regulate and integrate the different fuels in the country. Ms. Daniela, we look forward to listen to your views on how Brazil could contribute with the discussions based on the experience that we've been having, lessons learned during this period. One of them, I believe, being how to overcome the aspect of making sure that the supply of ethanol will be there to meet the current 27% blend that we have in Brazil. India will have 20% in the next 3 years. So we would love to listen to your views regarding those aspects. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Eduardo. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to greet all my panel mates and on behalf of ANP, thank the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi for inviting me to participate in this important event to talk about ethanol. It's an honor to be here and share with India our experience in implementing biofuel policies. Regarding the theme of the panel, it's important to highlight that Brazil and India are countries that have been valuing and investing in biofuels to diversify their energy matrix with a focus on reducing their dependence on imported oil products, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and pollutants resulting from the consumption of fossil fuels, and generating jobs and incomes in our country. In this context, ethanol plays an important role in achieving these goals, especially at this moment when the world is claiming for clean energy. Brazil, in the second largest producers, is the largest second producer of ethanol in the world and has extensive experience in public policies focused on ethanol. More than 40 years have passed since Proálcool was launched, and it was the first national ethanol program. The content of ethanol in gasoline, as Eduardo said, has been 27% since 2014, and the production of ethanol last year reached around 33 billion of liters. With RenovaBio, the new Brazilian policy on biofuels, our intention is to further encourage the production and use of biofuels in addition to stimulating sustainable production, ensuring long-term demand and creating a carbon credit market to offset emissions of GHG by fossil fuels. Ethanol is a biofuel that can reduce up to 90% of the carbon intensity in comparison with gasoline, and it contributes tremendously to reducing pollutant emission. With this expansion, the expansion of the use of this fuel contributes strongly to the fulfillment of our goals in the Paris Agreement, which consists of the carbonization of more than 600 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions in the transport sector within 10 years. And to reach this, will be necessary to increase the share of renewables in the transport sector from 25% to 30% by 2030. So it's tremendously challenging for Brazil too. And we are here with India in this challenge. With RenovaBio, Brazil expects to benefit its population by improving air quality, especially in urban areas, and to generate more jobs, contributing to rural and regional development. In this context, we can see that the establishment of public policies for the ethanol and biofuel sectors in general that encourage their use and provide predictability for the participation of such products is a path that has been successfully followed by Brazil. In addition, the development of vehicle technologies that allow the use of fuel with higher ethanol content, or even its exclusive use, was also important in the Brazilian experience because it allows for a great expansion of its use in the country, in addition to giving the consumer the power of choosing the fuel of their choice in economic and environmental terms. In Brazil, the fleet of flex fuel vehicles represents nowadays 81% of the total light vehicle fleet. It's also important to mention the product's logistical supply network, which has 300 distribution facilities to make this mix, and 41,000 service stations that make it possible to supply gasoline with 27% of anhydrous or 100% hydrated ethanol. Considering that India has a high sugarcane production capacity, it has enormous potential to become one of the largest ethanol producers in the world. The expansion of the number of ethanol producing units with a focus on efficient and less carbon intensity production, the creation of a logistical infrastructure for the distribution, the implementation of appropriate vehicle technologies, and the existence of clear and objective public policies that define deadlines for meeting minimum levels of mixture, they are necessary conditions to build a robust ethanol industry. In addition, the technology under development of engines that use fuel cells with ethanol has a great potential to help this increase in volume and surpass the stage related to the need to implement a flex fuel fleet in India. So we are here to contribute with India in this process of increasing the use of ethanol in your country. Together we can go further. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Very good information regarding the current benefits of flex fuel vehicles here in Brazil. Talking about the new biofuels program that was approved in Brazil 2 years ago, the Renova Bio, which are elements that could also be explored by the Indian ethanol program over the next years. So our last panelist that I would like to invite is Mr. Soborn Kumar Singh, who is a joint secretary from the Department of Food and Public Distribution on the Indian Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. Mr. Singh, we look forward to listen to your views from your ministry perspective regarding the benefits of ethanol program, and also what are the key elements of the policies that would ensure the successful result of this program. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Eduardo. Good evening to everyone. I'm Subodh Singh, Joint Secretary in Food and Public Distribution. As you all know that India started its ethanol blending with petrol program in 2003, but from 2003 to 2014, our policies were not consistent, and blending up to 2014, we could achieve only 1.5% blending with only 38 crore liters of ethanol. But from 2014, there are many policy reforms, large reforms, these have been done, and consistently there is an improvement regarding ethanol pricing policy. And then my colleague Sunil told that they brought biofuel policy in 2018, and it was broad-based, and many type of feedstocks were allowed to produce ethanol. Earlier, before 2018, we used to only produce from C-heavy molasses, which is very less in quantity, and the potential of ethanol production from C-heavy is very less. So in this decade, from like in 2001 to 2011, India was, the sugar production in India was cyclic in nature, 2 years surplus, then 1 year deficit. So we could not contribute much towards ethanol, but from 2011 onwards, we were always a surplus sugar producing country, except in 2016-17 when a drought in many parts of the country was there. So now we are facing the surplus sugar problem. That is, now we are structurally surplus sugar. So either we export it or divert towards ethanol. Then government decided that let us promote ethanol, because ethanol has many benefits, our speakers informed that it gives you the energy security. Country like India, which is mainly dependent on the import of petroleum products. And so we can save our foreign exchange, we can be energy secured, and the emissions pollution is reduced considerably when we use ethanol blended petrol. And more important for a country like India, which is basically a farm economy, agricultural based economy, it boosts the agricultural sector also. So with these objectives, government started promoting ethanol blending with the petrol program. And from 2014, when it was 1.5%, and last year we achieved 5% blending. But from last year, we have started jumping on this blending thing. Last year, it was 5%, and this year we have already achieved 7.6% blending. And next year, this 21-22, we are expecting we will be having a 10% blending. And seeing this results, we concluded that from only sugar sector, we cannot achieve 20% blending. So we allowed food grains also. India is a surplus food grain country also. And last year, in fact, we exported 20 million ton of food grains. And this year we are expecting 30 million ton of food grains. In spite of that, our godowns are full with food grains. So if some of food grains can be diverted towards ethanol, then that will give additional income to the farmers, and we will be extending our ethanol program. So we decided that the rice, maize, and other feed stocks can also be added in ethanol blending program, and the rates were fixed accordingly for ethanol produced from these type of food grains. But the distillation capacity from food grain side is limited, so the availability of ethanol from these food grains are limited. So we brought the scheme for boosting the ethanol production. We are providing the interest allowance and sort of incentive to investors who are interested in setting up of distilleries. Some state government have also started giving extra incentive on the setting up of distilleries. And we are expecting that by 2025, we should have, we will be needing around 10 billion liter of ethanol. And some ethanol is also required for other uses. So we should have at least 15 billion liter capacity. And so program on that is also going on. Because in sugar thing, like in Brazil also, I think it should be limited to some part of country. So in India also, basically sugarcane is produced mainly in our three provinces, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. So we want that ethanol should be produced in most of these states. So grain thing is also introduced. And we will have now distributed production of ethanol. So in place of 3 states, now we will have ethanol production in 20 to 25 states, so that ethanol can be blended locally. And the farmers of that area will also benefited, and transportation of ethanol from for long distances can also be eliminated. So this thing was also introduced, and so this will help, like by 2025, when we will be requiring around 10 billion liter of ethanol. So it will contribute from the both sides, sugarcane as well as grain. And this also helps investor by introduction of grain. It has also benefited the sugar sector, because some of them are converting from the molasses distillery to dual fate distillery. Because in every 3-4 years there is a problem in sugarcane crop. Sometimes sugarcane crop is less, and distilleries will remain idle. So they are converting it to dual feed distillery, so that if sugarcane crop is not there, then they can produce ethanol from the other feed stocks like food grains. So this is also a new feature we have added, and we are helping the investors by giving interest subsidy and other incentive schemes. So we are expecting that the capacity will be added by 2025, and then we presented the whole thing to our Honorable Prime Minister, and then on the Environment Day, he announced that India will achieve 20% blending target by 2025. So we all are working in that direction. We are concentrating on the ethanol production capacity. Petroleum Ministry is and oil marketing company, they are working on the logistics of transportation, how it can be transported by the rail other than roads, and then creating the additional storage capacity so that if ethanol is not produced in some months due to rains or floods or any other region, then that storage capacity can be used to blend the ethanol. So a lot of investment is done by our oil marketing companies. So with these things, I think we will be able to achieve the blending target, and this will give the huge opportunity for the investors. About $5.5 billion is expected to be invested in the distillery, and we are expecting that we will produce 6 million, in place of 6 million ton of sugar, we will produce more and more ethanol. And about 16.5 million ton of our food grains will be diverted towards ethanol. So this overall thing will help the farmers, will help the environment, and obviously it will give a lot of energy security in the country. So what we want to learn from Brazilian experience, because they are pioneer, and as you told that you are working in this field for last 5 decades. We are facing problem of one is transportation, like from distillery to oil depots. Presently, we are mostly it is transported through tankers. Then we have started through rail movement also. Is there any better way for transporting this ethanol to oil depots? Then how the existing vehicles, our vehicles are designed for some blends. So how much additional blend the existing vehicles can take, like 10% to 20%? What are the parts which needs to be replaced or something like that? So our automobile industry can learn from the Brazilian experience. Then we also have a large number of diesel vehicles in the passenger car segment and small goods vehicles segment. So how these vehicles can be replaced for flex fuel vehicles, so that our this ethanol requirement in flex fuel vehicle can increase, because after 25 our capacity will further come, and then we will have we should have flex fuel vehicles. So our plan is that we should introduce flex fuel vehicle from April 2024. So how to make this flex fuel vehicle popular among the consumers, among the automobile manufacturers. So this is also an area of learning from the Brazilian experience. Then the pricing of ethanol, we have ethanol produced is same, but because of the raw material prices or the price of the crops, various crops are different. So we have different ethanol rates. So this also how we can have small ethanol rates of for one sugarcane crops or other. So what is the experience in the Brazilians juice to ethanol or B-heavy molasses to ethanol? How can we have this similar type of rates? So this is also an area of learning from Brazil. So I think if we can have a learning from Brazil and a multidisciplinary delegation, if what should be the best time to visit Brazil and learn these things in physically how the things are done, like when the sugar mills or distilleries are in full operation. So that can also be the delegation from Food, Petroleum Ministry, oil marketing companies, and the vehicle manufacturers and the departments related to that. A combined team can visit and learn the experience on field also. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh. Very, very interesting aspects that you have brought related to the supply of ethanol. We understand that this is an important challenge that should be addressed over the next couple of years. You have mentioned also aspects related to incentives to the construction of new distilleries challenges regarding the distribution and storage of ethanol, and aspects related to automobile technology. Some of these aspects will be discussed in the following panels later today and tomorrow. But I guess that you have raised very, very important aspects to be discussed. One of the aspects that you have brought that I would like to invite Dr. Nastari to also bring his considerations is regarding how to fulfill the supply of this 20% blend. You also mentioned the surplus, the current surpluses of sugar, that structural surplus that India has right now, and how this could be diverted to ethanol as it happens in Brazil, and it's of beneficial of the sugarcane growers and the sugar industry, because it allows flexibility to them and maximize their revenues with this flexibility of producing either sugar or ethanol. I'd like to invite Dr. Nastari to try to elaborate a little bit on how it worked here in Brazil, and what would be your recommendation for India to ensure the supply through this current very well established sugar industry in India.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leão. I would like first to greet my colleague panelists, Ms. Daniele Condi, Mr. Sunil Kumar, very glad to see you again, sir, Mr. Singh, and addressing the issue that you have brought, Mr. Leão. Indeed, Brazil has become the sugarcane industry in Brazil has become a flex industry as well, not only the automobiles. We have learned this past two crops that the production mix between sugar and ethanol in Brazil has been able to move as much as 11.3% overall in the country, 11.3%. Which is a lot, really, and it is a big advantage in terms of market adaptation, because in fact the use of pure ethanol by the flex fleet functions as a sponge to absorb surplus cane when you have a favored climate, or when you have a market condition that invites the diversion of sugar to more or less ethanol. I believe this will happen as well with India, as India increases distillation capacity and creates a flex fleet, which hopefully India will be able to develop to the advantage of the sugarcane industry in India. I believe this will make the sugarcane industry stronger. What I would like also to point is that this complementarity between ethanol and gasoline will bring longevity and sustainability for the use of gasoline in India. What we have learned is that the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions of the mixture between ethanol and gasoline in the gasoline pool provides for emissions combined of ethanol and gasoline, which are lower than other technologies, even in the well-to-wheel concept. Not to mention the cradle to grave. Cradle to grave, definitely, because when you take into account the emissions that are required to build up the vehicle, including the electrified systems with the batteries, the discard of the batteries, the installation of the distribution systems to recharge the batteries, liquid fuels, low carbon emission liquid fuels, including ethanol, provide a much lower emission. So I believe India, in its design of increasing the proportion of ethanol use, it is in the direction of turning its sugarcane industry more or stronger, becoming flexible, and also enabling its traditional oil industry also to participate in this drive for increased efficiency, lower emissions in an effective way. So it's a very virtuous complementarity, but you have to do a few things right. You have to have policies which are coordinated. You have to be careful with the distribution. You have to be careful with the how you design emission limits on a local scale. But provided you do that, I'm sure that India will be very successful and will be very happy. And one way of increasing quickly the output is not only by converting this surplus sugar, which sometimes becomes a hurdle, but also by complementing the use of spoiled grains, even in sugarcane facilities, taking advantage of already installed steam and power generation, making the processing of spoiled grains sustainable, not requiring the use of fossil fuels to the processing of these spoiled grains like the US does. Let's recall, corn ethanol in the US uses natural gas, fossil-based, to convert corn. Well, if you get these spoiled grains processed in sugarcane mills using bagasse and power generating from sugarcane, you're going to be using both feedstocks, cane, and spoiled grains in a very sustainable way. This is happening very quickly in Brazil, and we are projecting that by 2031 in Brazil, corn ethanol produced in standalone and in flex mills associated with cane will sum 13.7 billion liters of corn ethanol alone, which is about 53% of the current sugarcane ethanol production this crop season. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nastari. Unfortunately, I was told here that we are almost running out of time. What I would like to suggest is a final round of considerations of all panelists here. I would suggest around 30 seconds to 1 minute, but a very short final consideration about what are the major, the benefits of this program are very clear to all of us. Some challenges were raised today. Some of them will be addressed in the following panels, such as regarding distribution, storage, automobile industry. This will be addressed in the following panels. But what I would like to suggest is 30 seconds for each of the panelists for a final consideration before we close the panel. So please, Dr. Nastari, if you could very briefly bring your final concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leon. Just final words, long-term approach, consistent policies, and looking all this as a developmental project. Thank you very much. I wish a lot of success to India.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Kumar?
From my side, I think, as Dr. Nastari said, distribution and transmission and transportation of blended fuel is a major challenge, and fleet modification and introduction of new type of cars like flex fuels is the key for our success. And we are hopeful that we'll achieve that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Mrs. Silva Conde?
I think the sustainable expansion of the sugarcane and the ethanol production is very important. Looking for all this concern of the world with clean energy, allied with the expansion of the supply, all the supply facilities and the things related to this chain is very important for you to have in mind. And after that, if you want, we can schedule another meeting to talk about the contracts that Eduardo have asked me to talk, and the stocks necessary to make this supply guaranteed. Thank you and success for you.
Thanks a lot, Danielle. Mr. Singh, last but not least, your final considerations, please.
Thank you, as Mr. Nastari suggested. We have all the governments, including Government of India and all the state governments, on board and consistency in policy. And then the main thing is we want to learn how the concerns of the automobile industry were addressed in the Brazil when you increase blend from 1% to higher percent, because they always have the concerns of their designs, engines, and safety precautions. So how those concerns can be addressed here, and the awareness among the vehicle owners. So that is also a learning point from Brazil.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting and insightful discussion in this panel. Before I hand over to Roberta Lima, I'd just like to thank again all the panelists. Particularly, I'd like to greet the great organization made by the Brazilian Embassy in Delhi. I'm positive that this Ethanol Talks Part 2 will be very useful for our both countries. Thank you very much. And Roberta, over to you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the organizers, I thank the chair, Mr. Leão, the speakers, and the audience that attended this panel on public policies and sustainability. We invite you now to our second panel discussion, which is Ethanol on the Road, Preparing the Automotive Industry, which will start straight away. And I hope you can further deepen the discussions along with us. Thank you very much.
Hello, we are now starting panel 2, which is titled Ethanol on the Road, Preparing the Automotive Industry. This panel is going to last 45 minutes. As chair, we will have the distinguished participation of Mr. Radhakrishnan, Director and CEO of TVS Motor Company and Chairman of Two Wheelers CEO Council of India. With the panel, we'll also count with the esteemed Mr. C.V. Raman, CTO of Maruti Suzuki and Chairman and Mission Group from India, and also Henry Joseph Jr., Technical Director of the National Association of Automotive Vehicle Manufacturers of Brazil, ANFAVEA. And last but not least, Mr. Ricardo Abreu, Technical Consultant of Unica. I would like now to give the floor for our chair, Mr. Radhakrishnan.
Good evening and good morning to all members who are participating in this virtual Sustainable Mobility Ethanol Talks 2. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere thanks to SIAM, the government of Brazil, UNICA, and APLA for inviting me to this webinar today. I really appreciate the efforts taken by the organizers to bring all stakeholders together on a single platform to deliberate and enhance the knowledge on this very critical issue of ethanol. To set the context, energy security and reduction in pollution is a very important objective in the context of the ongoing discussions on climate change. The government of India is clearly seeking to focus on local energy sources, their share in the entire energy mix of India. Indian automobile industry clearly supports this focus on self-reliance by exploring alternate energy usage for India's energy security. We would like to also take this opportunity to highlight the important targets set by the government of India and announced recently by our Honorable Prime Minister. India is committed to reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by 45%, cut the projected carbon emissions by 1 billion ton by 2030, and achieve a net zero target by 2070. We would like to now talk specifically about the Indian automobile industry. The industry had a unique achievement of completely moving over to BS6, which is equivalent to Euro 6, in a record time, and also been supporting the ethanol blending program of the government of India since inception. The ethanol blending program of the government started with an announcement of 5% ethanol blending in 2003 for 13 states and union territories. And then there was a mandate to 10% ethanol blending pan-India in 2008. The National Biofuels Policy was announced in 2009 with a target of 20% ethanol blending by 2017. This policy was subsequently revised in 2018 with a new target of 20% blending by 2030. And few months back, the 20% blending target was fixed for 2025 by our Honorable Prime Minister. As mentioned earlier, the Indian automobile industry has been very supportive of the ethanol blending program of the government of India. Now, Indian automobile industry is now gearing up to introduce E10 fully compatible vehicles by 2022, since E10 fuel would be available pan-India by then. Also, E20 material compatible vehicles are planned from 2023 onwards. The industry is currently ramping up to meet the revised target plan of 2025 for pan-India E20 fully compatible vehicles. We are also having discussions with the government of India on flex fuel vehicle introduction roadmap. One of the important challenge which we are currently working with the government of India and the oil companies is the vehicle compatibility with respect to usage of E20 fuel in E5 and E10 compatible vehicles, which are currently operational on the Indian roads. Material compatibility, emission, performance, drivability, durability would all have to be evaluated. With these important points, I would now like to open the panel discussion, which is the theme of the ethanol on the road, preparing the automotive industry. We have eminent panel. I would like to invite Mr. C.V. Raman, Chief Technology Officer of Maruti Suzuki India, Chairman of the Emission Group of SIAM, to give his remarks. Raman-san has been leading discussions on behalf of the Indian automobile industry with Government of India on the ethanol roadmap. We request him to share the passenger vehicle industry perspectives from India. Mr. Raman, you can lead the discussions.
So thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan, and good evening, everybody, and good morning also to our friends across, from Brazil and other parts. So I think context has been very well set by Mr. Radhakrishnan about the need of this particular discussion, and I would like to thank the organizers for having me here today for this important discussion. India has a big challenge as far as the energy security is concerned, and we have about $100 billion of import bill, out of which 85% is crude oil. The transport sector accounts for about 37% of the crude oil consumption, and the passenger vehicles, of course, account for about 4.3% of this. Having said this, with this energy security challenge and rising mobility need, alternate energy sources and emission reduction are something which we are all striving for. Also, in the background of the COP26 discussions, the GHG emissions are also an important factor. And so the transport sector is contributing about 13% of the GHG in India. And if we compare it to the Europe, it's roughly about 29%. And in passenger vehicles in India, it contributes to about 2.2%. The two-wheeler contributes to about 2.3%. Against this 2.2% of passenger vehicles, Europe is roughly about 15% of the GHG emissions. India has a very strong and INDC targets, nationally determined target, as per the COP21, and the stage 1 voluntary target which we had, we are already ahead of this, and we have as Mr. Radhakrishnan talked about, the net zero target already set by the Honorable Prime Minister as 2017. But of course, having said this, India has a very unique situation. We have a very low per capita income. We are a very cost-conscious market, and we have a lot of geographical and social diversity. And we need to, look at various types of, alternative fuels. Also, from a future regulatory focus, the fuel efficiency of targets which are there currently, it's applicable for the passenger vehicles. This is definitely going to help the GHG reduction, and of course we need to look at fuel efficiency from a target of tank to wheel rather than tank to wheel. We need to look at from a well to wheel perspective, which will actually give the actual impact of GHGs in the transport sector. And therefore, I think India needs to have a technology agnostic approach. Ethanol as a carbon neutral has a carbon neutral advantage, and also alternate fuel like CNG is much appreciated in India because of the low cost of running, and also from bio CNG, if you look at it, is carbon negative. So I think today's deliberations are going to be very, very important, and I'm very, I'm actually looking forward to the two co-panelists from Brazil to understand, better about, their success which they have, achieved in the ethanol space. and we'd like to learn from them, and this is a very good opportunity for us. So thank you. With that, I would like to close my opening comments.
Thank you, Raman-san, and I would like to now invite Mr. Henry Joseph Jr., Technical Director at the National Association of Automotive Vehicle Manufacturers of Brazil, to share his experiences and his special address. Would specially request Mr. Henry Joseph Jr. to share their experience on ethanol usage and the modification done on the engine systems, because that will be very valuable for all of us in India, and how this challenge of fuel efficiency drop being addressed in the vehicle manufacturers in Brazil will be another point, because India, like Brazil, people value the total cost of ownership, especially the fuel efficiency is one of the important factors. So, Mr. Henry Joseph, we are very eagerly waiting to listen to your experience and advice. You're muted. I think you have to remove your mute.
Okay. Now I expect you can hear me. Hello, thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to take part in this panel with the colleagues here, and to share a little bit of our experience in Brazil with the use of ethanol as a fuel. As you know, in Brazil, we have used this kind of fuel for a long time. For more than 40, 15 years, we are using ethanol blend with the gasoline, and also we use 100% ethanol as a fuel for vehicles. We have developed vehicles for use this kind of fuel when we use 100%, but the blend with the gasoline, it was adopted a little bit from beginning. We used to blend only 10, 12% with no problem 40, 15 years ago. And now we are blending 27% of ethanol with the gasoline. Also, for the 100% ethanol, in Brazil, it was developed vehicles able to use this kind of fuel. And now we have in Brazil since 2003 what we call flexible fuel vehicles, which are vehicles able to use any blend between ethanol and gasoline. You can use the fuel you want. You can blend when you want, no problems. We have both fuels in all fuel stations in the country, so the customer can choose which kind of fuel they want to use. Any time. It depends of the price, it depends of the availability, and depends sometimes the concern of the customer with the environment, or in other words, they can choose according to the preference. So these kind of vehicles are being sold in Brazil for a long time. The flexible fuels, today we have already produced in Brazil more than 36 million flexible fuels, which since 2003 until now, almost 90% of the sales of the new vehicles are flexible fuel vehicles. I'm talking about light vehicles. And the acceptance of this kind of vehicle for the customers is completely acceptable. There are no concerns about this kind of technology. Today in Brazil, more than 70% of the fleet, the total fleet of light vehicles in Brazil are flexible fuel vehicles. So the customers can, they prefer to have this kind of vehicle because they can choose any fuel, and sometimes it's not very normal to have to choose the ethanol due to price, or sometimes due to the availability. But the customers still in this situation, they prefer to have the flexible fuel because they can use the fuel they want, and when they resell the car, the price is a little bit better if the vehicle is a flexible fuel car. What shows that the customers and the population in general, they have accepted this kind of technology very well. There are no difference if you run using ethanol or using gasoline. With the ethanol, the power is a little bit better, but the fuel consumption is higher due to the energy content of ethanol, because ethanol has only 70% of the energy content of gasoline. So the fuel consumption, of course, must be a little bit higher to support this energy content difference. But for the customers, in terms of the drivability, in terms of the performance, in terms of the durability, in terms of the all the other aspects of the vehicle utilization are really very accepted, because there are no big difference between these two, the utilization of these two fuels. In terms of the environment, in Brazil, we have straight emission limits. We follow for the light vehicles, the American regulations in terms of the emissions. So we today have here very straight limits to be achieved with the vehicles, and it's possible to do that even with the flexible fuel vehicles. The technology is completely adapted to the new technologies. We have in the Brazilian market today, most of the cars already have direct injection engines, what means the cold start of the vehicle, which in the past used to be a little complicated, because in the low temperature, the starts of the ethanol is not so good with like the gasoline, but with the direct injection engines and the high pressure of the injectors today, this is not a problem anymore. Today, the car can be started in any temperature, environment temperature, so there is no problem with that also. And of course, we believe that this possibility to use ethanol more and more is something that will help the country to achieve the CO2 emission control. That is, for Brazil, is a really important issue to be achieved in the near future. And of course, this possibility to use this renewable fuel like the ethanol is something that will help us to achieve this task in the future more easy way. So there are some questions about the flexible fuel in terms of maintenance, in terms of the cost of the vehicle, something like that, which we see there is no problems with that. The maintenance of the vehicle is exactly the same of the maintenance of the gasoline car or regular engine car. There are no more costs with that. Even the cost of the vehicle when you buy a new car is this practically the same, because most of the technology to produce this car are the same technology already today applied for the regular engine cars. Of course, there is necessity to use more resistant materials today for the fuel injectors, the fuel pump, the tank of vehicle, the fuel tank. But today it's very normal to use this kind of protection also for the gasoline cars, because the blend of ethanol in the gasoline also requires changes in some materials to support the difference of fuel. So I see today that this possibility to have this kind of technology available in our country is something that really helps us to be more confident that we can achieve in the future targets in terms of the greenhouse gas limits or reductions or so. I don't see that we will have more problems. Even the combination of this kind of engine, the internal combustion engine, with electrical engines, like for the hybrid vehicles, for example, is already being done in Brazil. We have some automotive makers that already have in Brazilian market flexible fuel hybrid vehicles, what means that the car can run using ethanol, or in sometimes of running, they are using only the electric engines. Of course, the combination of both is something fantastic in terms of the emissions. So I would say that some new technology will be introduced in the near future, and we believe that we can also make the movement from the internal combustion engines for the electrical engines in the future in a easier way due to the possibility to use these hybrid and flexible fuel vehicles. So these are my initial comments. I don't know if you have more questions or some that I can clarify, but I am here trying to bring our experience to you in terms of this kind of technology. Thank you.
That was very useful, and thank you, Mr. Henry Joseph. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ricardo Abreu, technical consultant at the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association of Brazil, to give his remarks and his expertise in this area, and especially kindly mention Brazil's experience on ethanol supplies, and also maybe the perspective on pricing related experiences. That will be very useful for all of us.
Hello. I'm very glad to be here and have this opportunity to talk to you about these ethanol issues. And I will start making use of the speech from my two predecessors. First, talking about the introduction of ethanol blends in India that has already been planned. And I think that a way to anticipate the use of these blends in a broader base is to anticipate the introduction of flex fuel vehicles. As Henry has already mentioned, flex fuel vehicles are for a long time already dominated technology. We don't have problems in using flex fuel vehicles either or gasoline or ethanol. And by introducing flex fuel vehicles as soon as possible and as broad as possible, when you have the ethanol blends available, you have already a good vehicle basis to start using that. And there is no counter measures to be taken. Both fuels can work very well. The second point is, well, not only talking about the low carbon properties, this low carbon footprint of ethanol, but also in terms of engine technology. The ethanol fuel is a very good fuel for the engine. For sure, we have a different energy content, like Henry has explained, but if we measure the consumption in terms of energy per kilometer, we will have even better efficiency using ethanol, because the most important properties a fuel must have for running on internal combustion engine, mainly the modern internal combustion engine are more advantageous for ethanol. Octane number, vaporization heat, and the power you can take from a given engine size, everything plays on ethanol side. That means in the future, mainly due to the greenhouse gas properties, but also because of the other properties, ethanol tends to be the most important fuel in terms of liquid fuel for internal combustion engines. And this being liquid is a very good characteristic because you don't need a new infrastructure to distribute and to use it. That means the use of ethanol can be done in a quick way. And we all know the challenge we have to control the global warming and the necessity of anticipating the measures to control the global warming. And that can be done using ethanol in the already existing fleet of vehicles. That's a very good advantage in terms of considering this alternative. Second point, as I said, all modern engines, mainly turbocharged direct injection engines, are going to make a better use of these fuel properties. And that's going to make that the internal combustion engines can reach very high fuel efficiency, like we didn't think that would be possible some years ago. And that's a problem. We need to update our talks and our knowledge about the level of fuel efficiency or brake thermal efficiency from the engines today. And unfortunately, we keep saying that the internal combustion engine or the internal combustion engine has vehicles have a very low efficiency, that's not really like that. While the engines in the past had efficiency about 25%, today we have already running on market 38%, like the ones used in the hybrid vehicles. And there are some models above 40%, 44%. And recently, one engine and vehicle manufacturer showed that they can reach something around 50% with an engine especially developed for hybrid vehicles. And in fact, flex hybrid vehicles are going to be very important in the future because you have all benefits of very low carbon emissions with the benefit of using a small battery. And we all know that the battery manufacturing and battery raw material is a problem we are going to have to face in the years to come. Therefore, the use of ethanol together with other technologies like electrification and in parallel with other technologies, 100% electric vehicles, use of biogas, use of other fuels, is going to be mandatory in the future in terms of controlling the global warming and keep the costs of sustainable mobility in a level that can be afforded by the ordinary people. Well, in these terms, I think India and Brazil can join force and make a very good partnership to develop these new technologies, to develop these markets, to help other countries that, like India and Brazil, have similar characteristics, to use ethanol in all these new technologies. And besides that, there is a new technology that's being pointed out as the future, that fuel cell that can work on many biofuels. One of them is ethanol, but can work also as biogas and even with synthetic methanol done like a e-fuel. And this technology, fuel cell, must be developed together. And that's a very good opportunity for concentrate effort from our countries to make it happen. Therefore, I see the use of ethanol and this joint effort from countries like India and Brazil to create a parallel way to reduce global CO2 emissions, very welcome and very important. I'm looking forward to participate in this effort, and I am sure that the contacts among our countries are going to get closer and closer in order to make that a success. Thank you very much. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ricardo Abreu. I think it was a great sharing of your experiences. I think given the time, there are some interesting thoughts and questions from some of the people, but we will take one per person. I hope it is okay with all the participants because we have little delayed the overall session. I would like to start with Mr. Raman. I think with your experience, what are the key challenges, according to you, which needs to be addressed to enable the Indian passenger vehicle industry adopt high blends of ethanol? Any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mr. Radhakrishnan. As far as India is concerned, as you already said, we are already identified the roadmap for ethanol. We have worked it with the government, E10 by 2022 and E20 by 2025, and thereafter there is a push for flex fuel vehicles. I think one of the key challenges which are there for India has been till now been the availability of the ethanol. Ethanol E10 compliance had been made mandatory in 2008 at 10%. However, we were able to reach about 4.5% just about 2 years back. Today, we are in a very good position. We are at about 8.5%. And definitely, I think going forward, the oil industry and the government has said very clearly, 2022, we'll get the 10%. We are hopeful that the E20 also will happen. And that would mean about almost 10 billion liters of ethanol, which needs to be made, and overall the blending percentage, the reduction in crude consumption will be about 18%. The other challenge which you see is, compared to Brazil, and I'm sure, we can talk about this. Brazil is at a Euro 4 equivalent stage as far as the emissions is concerned. And as you pointed out in your opening remarks, we already transitioned to BS6 phase phase 1 in 2020 in a very short period of about 3 years. And in the next 3 years, from 20 to 23, April 23, we have to move to the second phase of BS6 phase 2. Which would mean that we have very stringent norms as far as the emissions are concerned. Also, from the in-service conformity requirements, these are unlike Europe. This is regulated by the test agencies. They will be checking it. So the durability requirement is actually increased to about 160,000 kilometers. So I think this is one thing which we all need to be cognizant of. Industry has already made the commitment that 2022 onwards we will make 2022-23 we will make all our vehicles E20 compliant. So compliance is not going to be a issue as far as the material compatibility is concerned. But I think for the two-wheeler and for the four-wheelers, the challenge will be from the calibration perspective and tuning the vehicle for the higher blends. And that is something, because traditionally we have been working at, E0 and E10. We had to make the regulation meet at E10, but also meet the drivability available, at E0 also we had to tune so that the customer does not have a problem. So the same thing would happen in the E10 to E20. But I'm sure the two-wheelers will have a little bit more challenge compared to the four-wheelers. Four-wheelers, we would be able to do that. The third point which I would like to make is about flex fuel. We don't have experience as far as India is concerned, but we are all going to work towards that. We are all evaluating that possibility, especially in the four-wheelers. Very limited or no experience, and some of our colleagues in the other OEMs who are operating in Brazil, yes, they have experience, and I'm sure we'll learn from the esteemed panelists here. The challenge will be in terms of the hardware changes which we need to do on the engine, and also making some of the specific hardwares like heated fuel rail and so on and so forth. India has other challenge about lower operating temperatures. We have to also check at -15 degrees, because in India, in some parts of the country, it goes minus. So I think which may be a little different from what is Brazil. So I think these are some of the challenges which we are seeing. Having said that, E10 and E20 compliance for the automotive industry is a direction which is very clear. Flex fuel is something which we are all investigating, working, and doing the feasibility study and seeing how we can do this. And last point is, of course, availability of abundant ethanol is also one point which we need to look at for E85 compliance, because portability of vehicles is important across India. We should be able to sell anywhere in India, but there is maybe availability of surplus ethanol in certain states, and so so that's something which we need to also work with around. So these are my comments on that.
Thank you, Raman-san, once again. There are many questions, but I would like to restrict one per person, because we will have opportunity to meet this eminent panelist later also. Mr. Henry Joseph, I think with your experience, when Brazil went for adopting flex fuel technology, I'm very sure there were major incentives and support given to the auto industry. So if you can kindly highlight some of the key learnings and like to prescribe to the policy makers in India, what kind of the transitions and how they support this change smoothly. Again, you are muted. You are muted.
Sorry. Well, in the beginning of the ethanol program in Brazil, the automotive industry really had some incentives to produce this kind of vehicle. At that time, it was assured a difference in terms of tax between the gasoline cars and the ethanol cars, in order to be possible to have the ethanol cars at the same final price of the gasoline cars in the market. This happens because in the beginning it was necessary to change some parts of the vehicle to protect, and at that time the ethanol cars were a little bit more expensive than the gasoline cars. But this happens 40 years ago. When we introduced the flexible fuel cars in the market, the difference, the incentive already was given to the engines to be possible to introduce the flexible fuel cars, also because the technology is what was a little bit expensive, and a difference of 5 points percent of in the tax was applied at that time. But a few years later, when we start to produce the 1-liter engines in the Brazilian market, and this kind of vehicle had a big support from the government, from the population, for this kind of vehicle, which we used to call popular cars, there was not a difference in terms of tax for the flexible fuel. Today, we still have some difference, but this is more to support this kind of technology in the market. But today we are having this big discussion about to have also some incentives for the electrical cars, for the hybrid cars, because this new technology to be possible to introduce in the market, we know they need to have some kind of support to be possible to achieve the customers. And but today, for the flexible fuel cars, there are no much big incentives anymore. Also, for the other point of view was the incentives for the ethanol producers. That in the beginning, many years ago, it was established a limit that 65% of the price of the gasoline for the ethanol. But this also was removed. Today, we don't have any kind of incentives for these kind of fuels. The taxes are practically the same for the gasoline and ethanol. So I don't see today that we still have many government incentives for this kind of technology in the Brazil. Well, I guess that is. I don't know if I have answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. Henry Joseph. And I have one question to Mr. Ricardo Abreu. I think there are roles played by various stakeholders in the industry in creating this ethanol economy in Brazil. Anything you would like to highlight to all of us? Some of the important contributions by every stakeholder in this journey?
I think when we talk about ethanol nowadays, we talk about well-to-wheel, right? Or life cycle analysis. That means in terms of using low carbon fuel, we need to look at the whole chain, not only what happens in the exhaust pipe. Talking about carbon emissions. But the same concept should be applied for everything else. Sustainability is not only about environmental issues. Sustainability is talking about environment, economics, and social issues. And when you look what kind of benefits the use of biofuels in a general sense can bring for a country in terms of jobs, creation of jobs in the plantation of sugar, what kind of benefits the cities that are developing this economy can have. The most developed cities in Brazil in terms of social index are the ones where sugarcane is planted. Around these cities, more than 1,000 cities have a very good level of social and economic levels due to the spread out of this biofuels technology. It's different from economics based on fossil fuels, for instance, that's very concentrated in small, big players with a lot of capital invested, and you spread out the benefits of this new era, this economic era, by using ethanol. I think we cannot forget that sustainability is not made only of environmental issues, but everything must be taken into consideration. And that's perhaps, in my opinion at least, the most important point of looking for the use of renewable fuels, biofuels in the future.
Thank you. I think we had, there are plenty of questions. All of you should apologize because we have exceeded the allotted 45 minutes. In fact, I have taken liberty of extending it by another 10 minutes, and sorry for that to all participants. It was a we have a great panel, and it was a very enriching discussion. I'm very sure we can reach out and discuss more on this topic. So I would like to thank personally the members who are attending this session virtually, and also all the industry representatives who have joined to this panel. Thank you all participants. Stay safe, and we will have, I know there are a lot of questions, and we will have more time to connect with each other and clarify and take this journey, ethanol journey forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of all Ethanol Talk partners, I'd like to reiterate our gratitude for all the speakers and the audience for today. Additionally, I'd like to tell all of you that Unica has informed that they are launching an ebook on sustainable mobility, ethanol blending policy, which is about flex fuel technology and higher blending main questions prepared based on Indian technical demands. This ebook will be available at the site sugarcane.org. Just to remind you, Ethanol Talks will continue tomorrow, starting at 4 p.m. Indian time, with 3 panels focusing on industrial production, logistics, and how Brazil and India will build the next steps together. We hope that you can join us today again tomorrow. See you all.